I have a rather difficult task here. I have to kind of follow all the nice things that were said, and particularly the inspiration, the positivity. But I'm going to ask some rather hard questions, and I do not for 1 minute want you all to think that I'm negative. I'm an incorrigible optimist. Those who know me will know that I can never say no, and I think everything's possible. But I do think there's an industry growing around inspiration, which is quite often surrounded with hubris, meaning that we go around saying it's all going to be okay. I call it the OT thing, the Oprah thing. Let's get on a couch, pretend it's all okay, hug a few people, write a book, and we'll save the world. I think it's a bit more complex than that. I'm not an expert, so I'm going to share with you some thoughts that I have and try and leave you to find the answers. My big thing is that intellectual dishonesty is today one of the biggest risks that we face in the world. So many of us want to do the right thing. We want to do good. But we're scared to go into the dark room and ask the hard questions. And I think intellectual dishonesty is something we need to challenge. And I often am asked at conferences I speak at, what do you think are the greatest risks? And if I'm with panelists from the US, et cetera, usually the Al-Qaeda thing comes up, it's peak oil, et cetera. And I usually say it's intellectual dishonesty. So I'd like to start by asking you to bear with me. Don't think of me as a pessimist or a negative person. I'm very positive. But I do think we ought to ask ourselves some rather hard questions. As far as what I do, I'm told that you're not supposed to advertise. But if you think I'm just negative, please go to my website. I do some positive things. But I want to ask you some hard questions. Okay. Some of these hard questions will be what I call slaying cows in front of Brahmins. So if there are any Brahmins here, please, no jihad, no fatwa on me, okay? And the idea is to get us to really understand that if we don't ask these questions, the innovations that we so loosely talk about, that horrible word, just gets thrown about as though it's so easy. And I'm going to ask you to sort of think about these things a bit more in a more sort of difficult manner and ask ourselves, why is it that some of the most pressing problems in the world have been so elusive? Why has it been so difficult? So, first, intellectual dishonesty with institutional handcuffs. One of the biggest sort of troubles that we have. People come with institutional handcuffs. They can never say what they think. I work with a lot of companies who talk about sustainability, very rarely able to speak very openly about what really the issues are. I'll not mention any companies. The other thing is I think we get all stuck in polite conversations. And it's so easy. We all want to be polite. We want to respect. But we need to move beyond polite conversations and really ask ourselves, have those discussions. I think inspiration is important, but I think sometimes we need to get angry. How many of you are angry? Good. Please, be angry. But don't take that anger in a negative way and impose it on others. But I don't see how we can change anything if we're not angry. But make it a positive thing, if that's not a contradiction in terms. I want to just say that the Asian development model that we've had for the last 50 years has been one that has been rooted in a sort of post-industrial economic model that I believe has reached its ceiling. If you look at what the economists in the world are telling us today about the world we're in, it says that for the world economy to revive, please, Asians, consume. I know the Japanese know this. You're all being told, consume, consume, consume. China's being told, consume, consume, consume. The Indians are being told, please consume. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that if we, the developing world, consume, and I don't want to be divisive here, like the Western world, there is just not enough to go around. There is simply not enough to go around. There are those who will tell us that technology and finance will solve all of these problems. It simply won't. So let me get into some of the hard questions. If 500 million Chinese today who live on $2, $3, and the Chinese government's aspiration is to lift them out of poverty, started to get wealthy, what do Chinese people do when they get a bit wealthier? They go and eat outside. Sorry? Eat fish. Okay, first. So if 500 million Chinese started to eat fish, like you and me, the privileged lot, the oceans will be empty. I know a fisheries expert here who would say, vouch for that too. The oceans will be empty. No technology, no finance will solve that problem. But who is to say to the Chinese, they can't have their fish? And I'm sorry, but my dear Japanese friends, you should have kept sashimi a secret in this country. You should have never sold it to the rest of the world because we do not deserve to eat sushi because we don't appreciate how fine that taste is. So the sushi, so the tuna is going down because now all of us eat sushi, even my dear Indian friends. Second, cars. India, car ownership today, 10 per 1,000 people. I hope my friends in Toyota won't be offended. Car ownership in the OECD countries, 700 per 1,000. The Chinese have about 60 per 1,000. We're being told now, please buy cars. And I know in America and Germany, they're saying buy one, get one free. Okay? And the Brits who don't have a car industry are making the same deal. So they'll be buying Toyota. But if the Chinese and Indians have car ownership levels like the OECD, which they could reach at current growth rates in 20, 30 years, do you know how many cars there'll be in the world? Just in China and India, there could be 1.5 to 2 billion cars. We need more cars like I need a hole in my head. 1.5 to 2 billion cars in China and India, according to estimates, will require the entire OPEC crude oil output to be shipped to China and India just to drive the cars. This is not going to happen. There will be a disruption. How that disruption takes place, we don't know. So third question, carbon dioxide. Today, we all demonize China as being the world's largest emitter of CO2. It's a misrepresentation of the facts. Chinese per capita emissions of CO2 are about a quarter of OECD countries. The Indians are about a tenth. The Chinese will not stop producing more CO2. The problem is, a lot of Chinese CO2 is actually laundered CO2. We have taken our factories from the first world and put them in the third world and said, you make it, but we will accuse you of pollution and carbon dioxide. It's laundering of CO2. The reality, though, is there is going to just be more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Though I agree, I think the Chinese are going to take steps. And I'll come to why the Chinese can do it more than anybody else, because of the form of government. Fourth question, meat production. Today, meat production and the entire cycle of meat production takes up about 30% of all ice-free land on the planet. 30%. And it's growing enormously. Today, the Chinese eat 50 grams of meat per capita. The good Indian vegetarians eat very little. Keep it that way, please. The US, and I'm not picking on Americans, eat about 220 kilograms of meat per capita per year. If the Chinese start eating meat like Americans, we will reach 50% of all ice-free land being used for meat production, which, as many of you might know, is one of the most inefficient conversions of energy. We grow more corn and other biomass to produce meat, not to mention the impacts on the intensive husbandry of meat, creating pandemics, etc. Fourth question, water. Many of us think that water is out there and free. The future wars of the world will be fought on water if we do not begin to come to understand how water is one of the most scarce properties in the world. Today, about 80% of all freshwater sources in Asia are polluted through industrial pollution, agricultural pollution, and through indiscriminate use by industry. This is one of the time bombs of the 21st century. Yet we have no pricing, and we think we can just talk about conservation in the most sort of mundane manner by suggesting that people behave well. I would suggest that we will need draconian regulations. Am I sounding negative? No. Okay. The third point would be, and this is one of my favorites. Today, we probably have more people who have access to mobile phones than sanitary toilets. I don't know about you, but when I think about that, I feel slightly constipated. I feel it's slightly odd that we live in a world in which some poor person in India today can have a mobile phone and not have a toilet. I've been to rural parts of India and China. where people have mobile phones and they download images of Paris Hilton without clothes. They don't have toilets, the kids don't go to school, something like that. I think this is a huge disconnect. I think, this is my idea for the day, all the companies involved in mobile phone production and providing the global infrastructure, which is massive, which most of us don't see, should be compelled to build toilets in the third world, seriously, with solar panels, so that you can charge as you discharge. Okay? Solar panels, and this works, I tell you, and it's so easy to do, yet we don't seem to do that. Thus, my constipation. Now, I will go through a couple of things, a couple of more things. Thousands of entrepreneurs, rural entrepreneurs today, who might need, say, anything from $200,000 to $2 million to convert some great ideas that include resource protection, creating value. Some of the things that some of our speakers spoke about earlier have no access to capital. I don't know if you know this, but it's very easy if you want $100. Some philanthropists will give you that, and then there's all the microfinance, which is, again, a very nice thing, but doesn't change macroeconomic conditions. I would suggest that the biggest opportunity for financial institutions who need to refurbish their reputation slightly, but look into the future, would be create an asset class of investments that will look at the $500,000 to $5 million. And there are millions of good ideas out there. Today, if you're an entrepreneur in India, in the rural areas, you have a great idea to make organic cotton, etc., all the silk we heard about, you will not get financing, no matter how sustainable, etc., not from anyone. And therein lies an opportunity. Why don't we do this? My next 2 points are to do with the business schools as well. So I'm taking a whole load of issues here and asking you to ask the hard questions. Many of us who are privileged seem to think that the ultimate education is to go to a business school. And I suggest that many of the business schools who are rethinking what they do need to completely reevaluate what the curriculums are. So many business schools have failed society because they preach a culture of entitlement. And all of you have read that most of those in Wall Street who were supposed to be the smart guys all went to the best business schools of the world. Imagine a business school that taught a completely different curriculum and the innovations that would create around some of the ideas we've heard today. None of them teach this, okay? There is that little ethics class, 1 course, 1 credit, okay? And done that. My last 2 points would be to do with the internet. Again, you come to a TED kind of forum, and how dare you suggest that the internet is a medium for antisocial behavior? I would argue that as much as we all said the internet is such a positive impact, we should be asking our hard questions about it as well. I don't know how many of you, but the vast majority of traffic on the internet is pornography. Yeah? It's porn. Sale of illegal drugs. And then, of course, distorted information. All I'm suggesting is, shouldn't we be asking those who claim to do no evil, you know who I'm talking about, that don't they have a responsibility in taking responsibility for creating the platform? If we're all so smart at creating this technology, I bet we are smart enough to make sure that some of the most antisocial material that travels through the internet can be removed. And what type of governments will take action? I mean, I'm very intrigued that whenever the Chinese government says, hey, we're going to stop this, everyone says, freedom of speech, let them do this and all of that. Therein lies a huge dilemma. Many governments, I think, are worried about this, but they dare not articulate the view that they need to challenge this. So my last point, which is asking the hard question, which rubs at the issue, what form of governments are we willing to accept if we are to honestly deal with these sort of questions that I posed? And I'll just end by saying, the Chinese government today can say that if you have a car, you will drive it for 50 kilometers a week, and the rest of the week you will park it. We will have the technology whereby we will stop your car because you have no right to use that car excessively and create the congestion we have. Would that be in the interest of the planet? In the interest of the planet, absolutely. There are those who might argue that it's human rights, that very precious thing. All I'm suggesting to you that is we live in a constrained world. We need to redefine entitlements. We need to redefine what we can have as our rights. What is very clear to me is that as the population of Asia grows to perhaps 4 billion in the next 50 years, and it's fastest growing here, we all can't have what you and I have. Someone's going to have to step in. Will it be the government? What form of government? I always compare, and I'll finish in 10 seconds, India and China. The Chinese have the ability to step in. Remember the one-child policy? The Indians, with their great parliamentary democracy, might not. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I believe this is the challenge of our times. So I want to end by saying that whilst we all need to remain positive, and I hope you're all remaining positive, I've asked the hard questions, the ultimate challenge for society going forward is not technology and not innovations in finance. It will be innovations in the way we order society and therefore the rules. And that will be, I think, the most important geopolitical issue for the 21st century. So thank you for your attention. Welcome to the 21st century. Thank you.